Welcome back, everyone. Today we are doing a deep dive into one of the top two decks of the OP09 format, and that is Red Hair Shanks. We'll be going over playstyle, tech options, and budget-friendly alternatives. So, this deck is very reminiscent of the blue-red Marco that we just got in OP08, where we control our opponent's field, so we minimize the damage we take early, while we build a wide board of big bosses to then swing at our opponent. And Shanks leader does something very similar to Marco in terms of how to stall, and that is by negging power. So if you don't know what it does, once per turn, the effect can be activated when your opponent attacks. Give up to one of your opponent's leader or characters minus 1,000 power during this turn. So early in the game, if your opponent can't build a board and commit Dawn to hit you, so they have to pick one of the two when their Dawns are limited. So for example, this is a going second deck. You let your opponent go first. They have one Dawn. They're going to play a Searcher because they can't attack it anyway. But on turn two, they're going to have three Dawns. So what can you play that early? No one's playing really baby blockers or anything like that. They're either going to have to commit all the Dawn to just swing at you, and then you can take it, or they can drop like a 3 cost, but if they drop a 3 cost, they can no longer hit you, which is why this is a really good card for slowing down the game, especially since we do need to hit our 10 Dawns to really start getting all our big bosses and then really controlling the board. So we have 4 Utas. This is your Searcher, nothing more. It is film. It searches for red hair pirates. That is important because we do have some cards that are not red hair pirates. We have 4 Building Snake. This is the Gordon of the deck. You place this card at the bottom of the owner's deck. Give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 3,000 power during their turn. It helps with the bigger bodies that we need to either attack into or blow up through effects. Next, we have 4 Otama. Of course, she's our 2K counter, but since she plays on theme, where if you play her, give something minus 2,000 power during their turn. So what's really nice about this deck is all the 2K counters are actually also playable with effects that we can actually use. And actually don't hesitate to drop them simply because they're a 2K counter, because sometimes it is better to minus their power, blow up the card that you're going to be using this card to defend against, and then just, deal with the problem completely. So next, we have the other 2K counters. Hongo, you may rest this character. If your leader has the red-headed pirate, give up to one of your opponent's character minus 2,000 power within the turn. So this is actually really good to play later in the game when you have like some bosses out. Your opponent wants to take this out. They'll have to actually use their leader swing on this, because if they have bigger bosses, they're going to either hit you or try to kill over your bosses. And leaving this on the field will give you additional effects the longer it stays out. So another thing we have is Lime Juice. Your opponent cannot activate up to 1 blocker character that has 4,000 power or less during this turn. Now that's actually really interesting because this is going to be our finisher card. Like I said, all our 2Ks are actually playable. So if you have like your 10 cost Shanks and stuff out and you reduce the power of their blockers, then this can actually just prevent, you can drop this and then swing with your Shanks, because then they can't block. So that's actually a really good finisher. But like I said, all the 2Ks are playable. Next, we have 4 Lucky Roo. It is a blocker. On KO, if your leader has the red hair pirates type, KO up to one of your opponent's character with a base power of 6,000 or less. This is amazing. You really need to have this to slow down the faster paced decks. So for example, like Doflamingo, if they try to play something, you drop this, let it die, and then it will take out something else with it. So that's actually really amazing for controlling the board. All the cards in from 5 and 6 cost, or 6 and 5 and 6 costs and lower are all about controlling the board and just to slow the game down while we build up our bosses. Next, we have 2 Silvers Rayleigh. Now, it's very important to point out that Rayleigh is a Roger Pirate, so it's not searchable. And because it seems like a really good blocker. It's a blocker, it's a 5/6 blocker, and it's basically a queen, where if your opponent has 2 or more characters with a base power of 5,000 or more, draw 2 cards and trash 1 card. It's basically a queen. Now, the reason we're not running this at 4 is, again, not searchable. And we are controlling our opponent's board, so they shouldn't have that many bodies. So this is actually only a really late game card when your opponent has bosses out and we're about to go in for the kill, but we couldn't quite kill him, then we drop this out. Because if we're playing this right, where our opponent doesn't have a board, then we're never getting the draw 2 trash 1, so it's just going to be a 5-6. So which is why I play it at 2. Next we have Yasop. On play, up to one of your leader, gain 1,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn. That is actually really crazy for Shanks, because that basically makes him a 6 for a turn, and then it also has a when attacking skill, give up to one of your opponent's character minus 1,000 power this turn. So it actually can help clear board as well. So it can help mitigate the damage you take and help clear board, which is amazing. Next, we have the co-captain, the vice captain. We have Ben Beckman. So on play, trash up to one of your opponent's character with 6,000 power or less. Trash. So that actually bypasses KO effects. And because it's 7, we actually still have time and room to play like our 1 cost, like our Otama and our Building Snake, to take out bigger cards, which is just absolutely phenomenal, which is why this control is actually really good. That's another reason why we want to go second. So we actually can play an Otama or a Building Snake if we need to. And of course, the best control card in Marco, it's unfortunately not as good in this deck, simply because Marco would minus the power on something from the leader effect on your turn, not your opponent's. So we're just changing the timing on that. But don't get me wrong, this is still a really good card. So on play, give up to 1 Rest of the Dawn card to your leader or your characters, and then activate main, you rest this character, KO one of your opponent's cards with 5,000 power or less. So if we go second, we can still drop a Building Snake or a Otama or something, and then pop it, and drop this and then pop it, which is still really amazing. Now, the reason this deck is so expensive is because of these 4 Silvers Rayleigh. These are about close to hitting 40 bucks now. I hope you guys picked them up earlier. But on play, select up to 2 of your opponent's characters and give 1 character -3 and the other -2 until the end of your opponent's next turn. So it actually helps mitigate the damages coming your way if you can't pop them. Then KO one of your opponent's character with 3,000 power or less. That's not as important, but if we can mitigate the amount of damages we're coming our way, it's really good, especially if we drop it if we don't have our control cards. This is another way to slow the game down. All right, and of course, next we have our big boss of the decks. I was fortunate enough to pull this out of my first box, so I just absolutely love this wanted poster. So our boss, 10 costs, 12k. Give all your opponent's character minus 1,000 power. That's on both turns. That's what's so amazing about this. And then this is Rush. So this actually just comes out and just start taking out characters. Or if you're going ahead and pushing for game, then, obviously drop it out, swing. And it actually does help for our guarding as well because of the minus 1,000. And of course we have 4, and I got 2 alt arts of it. Like, all of these look amazing. Next, we have 2 of the Pirate King himself. Rush, when your opponent activates blocker, if either you or your opponent has 0 life cards, you win the game. Now, that's very important if you already have a board set up. So you want to already have like 2 or 3 bosses out. Drop this. If your opponent has a blocker, they need to start either using the blockers early before they get down to 0, and then they can't use it anymore. So that's the way to do it. Or if you're at 0, it actually makes your opponent stops to think and go, oh, I don't want to give him that extra life or take that life, so he goes down to 0, and then when I use a blocker, I also lose. So that's actually why we also got to play it. So if you haven't noticed, this deck has a ton of bricks, but if we're controlling right, it's fine because we're not guarding too much. But because we do have a ton of bricks, we do have to play 2 Batman or Kick Course. It's free because, we're playing all these 10 cost, especially late. We have no active Dawn. So we can trash one of our cards from hand up to one of our leader characters, gain 3,000 power during the turn. That's why I played this one. Now, let's go over the tech choices and budget choices. All right, so I don't know if anyone's noticed, but the Sanji is going up. It's going up for the Sanji decks, but it's also going up because of Roger. If you set this up right and you play Sanji the turn before you play Roger, and you're at like 1 life or something, you drop a Roger, take the life because of the Sanji, give Sanji, making him a 7, and now you're at 0, and then now your opponent can't use any blocker, and you got a 7k and a 13k, and then, you know, whatever else you have on board. That is why this card is so good if you decided to focus more on the Roger win condition. Now, obviously, it's not as consistent, or I don't feel it to be as consistent. I don't like going down, taking my own life like that, so I'm not focusing on that way to win. Next, we have Baccarat. It is a blocker, but because we play so many bricks in hand, we actually use its on your opponent's attack. Once per turn, you may trash 1 card from your hand. Up to 1 of your leader or character cards gain 2,000 power during this battle. So basically making any of your bricks a 2k counter, which is why people play this, because you can do that once and then use it as a blocker, slowing the game down a lot. All right, one of the budget-friendly alternatives, or you can actually just play this in general, 2 silvers Rayleigh, is I have seen a lot of lists play Monkey D. Dragon. The reason I personally don't play it is because I'm not hitting my opponent early for damage. I don't want to. I actually much rather prefer to control the board so my board gets wider. So some of the lists I do see play like 2 of it, but they usually play it for like after the Shanks is already set up and they need that extra attack, because after your board is set up, Rayleigh doesn't do as much as Dragon does. Rayleigh is mostly for early control, slow the game down, and then Dragon, if you already have your board set up, go for the game, which is really amazing. Now, some of the earlier lists did play this Shanks. On play, KO one of your opponent's character with 10,000 power or less. I kind of get it. So for example, if you are going against like Blackbeard, you have to already have like 2 Shanks already set up on board, because you're not minusing anywhere else because this costs 10, and then you can blow it up. And you could also just drop it out at 10. Like for example, your opponent is going to know that you're controlling the board, so they're going to leave their stuff standing. So either you pass turn or you attack them directly, and then they're going to take the damage in that type of control game. So they're going to take that damage, they're going to get the resource that they want, and then have built a board that can then strike back at you, which is why some people play this. So you can hit them for 5. They usually don't want to take a 5, but sometimes they might. Then you drop this out, and then blow up whatever the heck they have dropped out. But if you're going against Blackbeard and they drop Blackbeard, you're not going to get this to KO Blackbeard, because you're going to use all 10 Dawn and it only hits a 10. And then finally, we have our other alternative counters. So this is also going back up, Gum Gum Fire Pistol, Fire Fist Pistol Red Hawk. So up to 1 of your opponent's leader or character, or up to 1 of your leader or character gains 4,000 power, then KO 1 of your opponent's character with that 4,000 power less. Because we can minus on our opponent's turn, and then we use this, you could kill something, but I don't think it's that good, because it kills a 5k, because you're going to use your leader to -1, and unless it's late in the game. But late in the game, I prefer to, keep dropping out my 10s. So if you did go like 10, 10, and then Dragon or Rayleigh for 8, and then you do have this, yes, you could, blow up something really good. I get it, but I like to, just keep the pressure on by dropping out Shanks, and then like Roger or something. But if you did drop like Rayleigh or Dragon, I understand why people play this, because then it can actually pop something really huge because of all the minuses you're giving. And of course, we can't forget Radical Beam. Now, you can either play Radical Beam or Guard Point. Now, the reason, again, I don't play this is I generally don't leave Dawn up. If you are the type of person to go like 10, 10, 8, then of course you will have the Dawn to go for the counters, stuff like that. But like me, I like to keep the pressure on, so I go like 10, 10, 10, just completely just pushing for a game at the end. So that is why I choose Batmaner's Kick Horse over the other counter cards. If you did play like Guard Point, it would be better to like start guarding early, because you're not really going to be focusing on defense at the end. You're going to be controlling in the beginning and then going for kills at the end, which is why you need to start conserving how much damage you take early, because we're going to be taking all our opponent's damage attacks at the end of the game. All right, guys, will be doing a couple gameplay videos, and keep an eye out. And let me know down in the comments below what's the deck profile you want to see on this channel from this set. Thanks for watching.